How did you get to New York City?
I got here via the most isolated city on the planet, which is my hometown of Perth. So I was a syndicated cartoonist, and then my syndicate is here in America. So I was trying to do it from Australia for years, and then I was like, this is ridiculous. So I got a green card and moved to New York. I always wanted to live in New York anyway. But yeah, trying to work from Australia with a New York editor, like taking Skype calls at 3 a.m. Remember Skype?
Of course.
Yeah. It just wasn't attainable. It was untenable. So I decided I was going to move here and live here and work here and hit my goals, of getting in the New Yorker and Mad Magazine and all my childhood, fantasies. I thought you get to live once, so this was it.
I want to get into how you got into drawing cartoons in the first place. How do you make sense of that? Was this always an interest of yours from the time you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually, if I'm honest, I always thought of it as like a hobby. I didn't know it was a job. I had no idea you could do it for a living. And then when I was 15, I got detention because I would always like draw teachers and stuff on my school, like my file, my school. And I drew a really offensive caricature of my history teacher, Mr. Cook. And it was pretty bad. And he gave me detention. He found it. He gave me detention. And then while I was in detention, he came over to the desk and like quietly, so that none of the other kids could hear, he was like, hey, listen, the school gardener's retiring. Can I get you to do a really mean caricature of him as a retirement gift? I'll give you $20. And I was like, are you for real right now? I was like, yeah. I'm like, $20? Whoa. Like I was 15. And I was like, and something just snapped in my brain. I'm like, I can make money doing this. This is insane. And yeah, so Mr. Cook was the reason. I mean, he then sort of forced me to see how you even make a living as a cartoonist. And back then, I mean, it was the late 90s, so you could get a comic strip in the newspaper, you could get in magazines, be like a New Yorker cartoonist, you could do like Mad Magazine, do illustrations and cartoons there. You could do like caricatures, you could do book illustrations, animation. There was like this whole wide world that opened up to me of things that I could do. And so I just did all of them. I just was like, all right, screw it, I'm just going to try all of it. And so I didn't go to college. I left high school and I just went straight into cartooning. I had like a day job while I was figuring it out for like 2 years. And then I've been freelance like 21 years. Yeah.
What were your first paid jobs outside of high school? Or I guess maybe a better question would be, how did you have the confidence? What gave you the confidence graduating from high school that college was not necessarily the right path?
I actually did enroll in college and I deferred just for my parents because I got in, like I got a decent score in my, SATs, and then I enrolled in like some bullshit communications course, just whatever, and then just deferred, said, I'll just take a year. I'll just, like a gap year. And in that year, I was just taking whatever I could, just like panicking and scrambling, going, does anyone want drawings? And I was doing like gift caricatures for friends. And I was like doing illustrations for like people's books and stuff for like pennies on the dollar. It was crazy. And I guess the confidence came from like, I definitely had like ridiculous imposter syndrome, but I was so enamored of this like form of the idea that you could do cartoons and that they were this art form that were like nothing else, and that there was still like a need for them there was like a space for them, in the culture, in the, in the media, in the industry. And I think eventually when I was working as like a designer, like a printer, for a couple of years, and having that as like a backup kind of gave me the confidence to go, all right, I'm going to get up at 8 a.m. I'm going to swim. That's my only exercise I'm going to do. I'm going to work from like 9 until 6 and then go home and then draw from like 7 until 3 in the morning. And that's what I did every day. I burnt out completely. It was ridiculous. But that's how I got my chops. I got my 10,000 hours in doing that. And eventually just left that. They offered me a promotion and I was looking to buy a house. And I idiotically turned down the promotion, which was going to be twice the money. And I was like, I'm actually going to say no and become a freelance cartoonist. And my boss laughed at me. He's like, you're insane. I'm like, yeah, I know. But I don't regret that because it was like, because of the risk, it was like sunk cost bias. I was like, I have to make this work now.
Yeah.
So I was living out of my mom's duplex. I was raised by a single mom. So like very small place in the suburbs, and it was just me and her at the time. And I had like my bedroom, which I turned into a studio, and I worked from there and just kind of made it work. And I eventually did buy a place. I bought like a little condo and worked out of there for a year, and then moved to Melbourne for 6 years, and then moved to New York. Like I just worked my way up in a mad panic every year. That was my that's the state I've been in pretty much nonstop. Mad panic to pay the rent since then. Yeah,
I would love to hear about Perth, Australia. I've never been there. I have been to Australia, but I would love to hear about how that place shaped you, specifically as it's related to your art in any way that resonates with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I was saying it's the most isolated city in the world, it feels like that too. There's nothing nearby at all for hours in any direction. I think the closest city is like Adelaide, and it's like 3 hours east on a plane. Wow. Like I think Bali is 3 hours north. It's a great, you know what? I heard someone say it's a great place to be a baby and have a baby and not a lot in between. But they have this great acting school there called Whopper. That's where like Heath Ledger and Hugh Jackman and all those people went. And part of what they used to say about it was it's a great place to get good while nobody's watching. Like you make all your mistakes, you figure out your style, you hone your skill in a small place and like get good so that when you arrive somewhere like Melbourne or New York or whatever, you arrive not fully formed, but like a few steps ahead. They're like, oh, where the hell did this guy come from? Like he's already, got his chops. Like he's got a style, he can work, and so Perth was like a crucible. It was like this, like very like, all right, you got to hone your skills. You have time to do it because there's nothing else to do unless you're a surfer or you're like, coal mining or whatever, or football. So Perth is it's a beautiful, very quiet, very clean place, very isolated, and it's a really good place to hone your craft. So I actually, I resented it at the time because I was in my 20s and I was bored out of my mind. Yeah. But now I look at it, I'm very lucky because if I grew up in New York, I don't think I would have had the patience or the discipline to not be distracted by everything, and to have the time and discipline to like study up, even if I went to like SVA or RISD or FIT or any of that stuff, I'd be just like so distracted, So Perth was a good place to hone that. It's a very, I don't want to say conservative place. Very, maybe parochial is the word. And you've heard of Quokkas. I don't know if
I don't think so.
Quokkas are those little marsupials, they're like miniature little, not kangaroos, but like if you see them, you can't unsee them. Anyone who has their Instagram feed has at some point popped up with a quokka. There's an island in Perth called Rottnest, and that's the only place in the world that these quokkas exist. Wow. Some people, that's the only thing they know about Perth, and that's totally fine with me. They're the cutest creatures in the world. As soon as you Google it, you're like, I get it. I get it. Quokkas. Yeah.
Do you come from a family or a lineage of artists or illustrators?
Not at all. No, everyone in my family worked in hospitality. My mom and dad ran a pub when I grew up. They owned a hotel, like a pub, and a restaurant. And then my sister was a restaurant manager and was like training to be a sommelier. And then she would manage restaurants and, do the wine lists and all that sort of stuff. Like everyone in my family, they did run their own businesses. They were self-starters, but none of them worked in the arts. Not one of them. My grandparents didn't. My aunts and uncles, none of them did. I was told on my dad's side, I have like a distant uncle named Keith who liked to draw. So apparently maybe there's like a gene somewhere along the line that kind of got passed down, like a what do you call it, recessive gene. But no one else in my family is well, my sister could kind of paint a bit in high school. She did that. She was pretty artistic, but that was about it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm the only artist in the family. Yeah.
You told the story about getting detention for drawing that cartoonish caricature of your teacher. Yeah. How did you learn this was something that you loved or that you were good at?
I think it came out of. So I used to have to take. I lived quite far from my school because when my parents split up, I had to move to like a very far away suburb from where I went to high school, and I had to take 2 trains and 2 buses to school every day, and that's a lot of commuting time. Yeah. So I just kind of had to kill the time, and so I just have like a clipboard with like a bunch of like cartridge paper in it and like a ballpoint pen, and I would just draw. I'd draw everything I saw. I'd draw cartoons. I would draw like Ren and Stimpy and like the Flintstones, and like I just draw whatever. My visual vocabulary was like slowly building, and I enjoyed it. It was like just outside of my comfort zone. It's like you know how they say like getting in the zone is like it's something just outside of your comfort zone. There's a novelty to it. There's an interest in it. It ticked all those boxes. So I would just like lose time on the train and the bus drawing, and then other kids on the bus would start requesting stuff for me to draw. So I was the kid on the bus who was like the drawing kid, and then people would request me to draw stuff at school and on the bus and the train. So I kind of honed a lot of the first early drawing skills there in commutes. And I still do it now on the subway. Like I draw on the subway all the time. And there's something about being in motion, like on a bus or a train, that just like clicks me into, or even a plane, like I just clicks me into that mode, and I'm like, I just get lost in drawing. It's like you get lost in a world that you build, because it's still hard. I mean, certain things get easier, but you're always pushing yourself. But yeah, when I'm in motion, I draw. Which is good because the long haul 24 hours of flying to get home, that helps pass the time. Yeah, but I think that was how I kind of honed it, was I had the time. It was probably out of boredom. And then I really loved it. As soon as I realized it was a form, I then would buy like Mad Magazine and Spider-Man comics, and like I would seek out other people doing the thing, like comics and cartoons, and then I'd be like copying them and going, how does Mort Drucker draw hands in Mad Max, like the movie parodies? How does Sergio Aragonés do the little marginal cartoons in the borders? You know, how does like Jack Davis or any of these guys? Like I was just like looking at their stuff and going, how the hell do I figure that out? Like reverse engineering it by tracing. And yeah, that was like an education. Mad Magazine was like my education. That was my pedigree, comedic and artistic pedigree. Yeah.
Did you take formal classes to learn how to reverse engineer these creations? How did you develop your skill set?
No, I never went to art school. I never got any formal training, which I think now is kind of a mistake because I didn't learn the fundamentals. I didn't learn the basics. I just made them up. I just figured it out myself. And recently I went to SVA's School of Visual Arts Open Day, and I was like, I wonder if I can enroll as like a mature age student, just like go back and just start over again, just like learn the basics. But they're pretty deeply ingrained now. But yeah, the only training I got was just like copying from other artists. And then eventually I think the education that I got, which is very unconventional, but I recommend, is I started meeting other cartoonists. And that unlocked a huge, just like a vault of information. Because these were people who had been doing it for decades and had all these bits of business to share, all these like mistakes not to make, just insights and techniques and tools. So yeah, I joined something called the Australian Cartoonist Association. And over the course of like a decade, I sort of became a big part of that. And then I got elected president of that org by the time I was like, I don't know, my mid-20s. And I just loved digging into like the process and talking to all the cartoonists about like how they did things from like the business side of like getting work and sustaining clients and figuring out how to work with art directors and stuff to like just the physical, mechanical, how do you use these tools? How do you draw? How do you compose a piece? How do you draw the eye around an image using solids and composition? And yeah, so my education was really through the hands of other cartoonists. That was my That was my education. And then I did the same thing when I moved to America. I joined the National Cartoonist Society, met all the best cartoonists in America, and they leveled me up again. That was my education.
What triggered the move to Melbourne?
Well, Perth isn't exactly the height of artistic. It's not exactly a hub for the arts, unfortunately. So I kind of hit a wall there. I was doing editorial cartoons for the local newspapers, which is great. Again, a good place to get good while no one's watching. Make your mistakes, I guess. I was doing political cartoons for newspapers, and what happened was there was a comic strip, and this was like our version of like Peanuts. So it was huge in Australia. It had been running since 1921.
Wow.
And it was like iconic. It had 4 different cartoonists write and draw it over that time. And in 2007, the then president of the Australian Cartoonist Association, James Kemsley, he unfortunately was dying of ALS, and he tapped me to take over from him. I was 23. And I had never done a comic strip before. This was huge syndicated comic strip. It was in 34 countries, and hundreds of newspapers, and it was just it was ubiquitous. Everyone knew this. It was in every newspaper in Australia, and he asked me to take it over, and we thought we had more time together for him to like train me up, but then he died like 3 days later after asking me, so I had to figure it out on my own. And so I moved to Melbourne because all the newspapers were on the East Coast, most of them. And I have to go in and like deal with them, renegotiate the contracts. I had to figure out all the royalty stuff with the widow and the family and the estate of the original creator. And it was a very messy first couple of years of figuring out like royalties and rights and licensing and copyright and all that stuff. But that was Melbourne. Also, it was twofold. It was that I needed to be there to do that work. And then also 2007, that same year, I started doing stand-up. I got very lucky in Perth, again, honing stand-up while no one was really watching. And then I went to Melbourne because they had the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. They had a bunch of comedy clubs. They had way more shows. And I was doing comedy at night and drawing during the day. So I had like this kind of Batman Bruce Wayne existence of like, there's no real comedy during the day. So I would work during the day and then do comedy at night. And Melbourne is the best city. It's like the New York of Australia.
Yeah.
Sydney's like the LA. New York is like Melbourne. So I did that for 6 years. And that was a lot. It was a lot of work. And then again, I kind of hit a wall. Like it was in every paper. I was like, where else can I go? I want to expand. I want to get better. And I would come to America like once a year for about a month at a time. And there was always like an annual conference with the National Cartoonist Society. So I would just kind of, come for a month. I would come to New York. I'd do open mics and shows. And then, do the conference and then go back to Australia. And then eventually I was like, this is getting silly. I can't keep doing the comic strip from here, working with an American syndicate. And so I just pulled the pin and applied for a green card. That took a while. It took a long while. And then when I got that, I moved to New York. And I've been here 11 years. That was 2014. 11 years. Yeah.
When you moved to Melbourne, did you think you would live there forever? I mean, I would love to hear about how you knew you had hit a wall and that it was time to go.
Yeah, it's a good question. I never really, at the time, I didn't consciously really think too much about like when I moved to Melbourne, I didn't think, oh, this is it forever.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is like, when you play like a video game, when you're gaming and it's one of those ones where there's like a map. And as you discover more areas of the game, the map kind of reveals more. Otherwise, everything else is like in the dark.
Yeah.
And it just starts to reveal it as you go. When you're in Perth, you have a different idea of how big the map is. And you just think it's this, little bubble. And then you move to Melbourne and you go, oh crap, there's so much, it's so much bigger. There's so many more things. And there's the scale and the scope of things is so much bigger and there's so much opportunity. And there's so much I don't know. It's like the more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. And the same was true of New York and America in general. It was just like, wow, there's again like 10x, so much more of the map I don't know exists. So when I moved to Melbourne, I thought, yeah, wow, this is it. I've hit the big smoke. This is amazing. This is the big city. And I did for a minute there. It was like, all right, well, this is it. This is where I live now. And it wasn't until I started coming to America that I realized, oh, crap, wow, there's so much more out there that I don't even realize. And you know what it was? There was a cartoonist named Paul Rigby. He was the cartoonist for the New York Post for like 30 years. The Daily News and then the New York Post. He was Australian. He was from Perth.
Really?
Yeah. And it's crazy. He was a big deal here for many years. He, Pat Oliphant, who was also Australian, he's another big American editorial cartoonist here. He wrote, when I was coming here in like 2006, I want to say 5 or 6, he wrote ahead to Arnold Roth, who was like a huge, iconic New Yorker cartoonist and illustrator, Bill Gallo, who was the sports cartoonist for the Daily News, and Pat Oliphant, who was this iconic editorial cartoonist in America, like Pulitzer Prize winner. And I teed up like meetings with them while I was here to like meet them and, learn from them. And it was meeting them that was like, oh, wow, this is the amount that I could learn from these people is amazing. And they were huge, and I met all these big cartoonists like Jim Davis, who does Garfield, and like Kathy, guys, Kathy. All these cartoonists who are like so generous with their time and attention and like, and just like advice. And I was like, I gotta come here. There's so much more. I just want to like soak up everything there is to learn. And I still feel like that. I've been here a long time, but I still feel like there's just so much to learn and soak up. I guess Melbourne felt like it for a while, and then the rest of the map opened up, and I was like, holy crap, Melbourne is it's like being Melbourne famous is like being famous in Delaware,
Yeah.
no one knows who you are. Felt like that's the thing. I was Australia famous in the cartooning world. And I was on TV and stuff as well, but like it's Australia. I mean, it's Australia. It's a very small, very insular. It's pretty small. It's like being famous in the UK. There are people, you hear a comedian in the UK make a reference that involves the name of like a celebrity there, and you're like, who the fuck is that? Like, what? I've never heard of this person, but they're like on coins in the UK, like they're famous. It's like that. It's a very like closed shop. And I just was like, yeah, there's a whole different metric that could be. I'd be crazy if I didn't come to America to at least try. And I had, as I said, my friend died, and my mentor, he died, and I had a few other people died. Paul Rigby, who wrote those letters, he then died. And I just kind of went to a lot of funerals in my 20s of these people who I'm like, this isn't like a rehearsal. I'm not going to get another shot at this. I got to do it. Just what have I got to lose? Yeah. I didn't have any debts, no kids, no, I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So I did. And I don't regret it. It was a huge risk. It was a huge sacrifice. Left everyone I've ever known, every friend I've ever made, every family member, and just like came here with nothing, just started from scratch. But yeah, the National Cartoonist Society, they like became my family, all the cartoonists. So, and they still are. That was the big thing. The other cartoonists and moving to New York. Yeah.
So for growth, I mean, it sounds like it was the natural growth move.
Yeah, it felt that way. It's so strange. It was like a subconscious. It just felt like a natural next step. But there was always something kind of pulling me, not pushing me, but like pulling me towards it. Like I wasn't running from anything. In Australia, I was like moving. I was being pulled towards something in America. An
attraction.
It was very much a magnetic like attraction, and it was the same with stand up. Like I came here, started doing stand up, and I was doing stand up every night. I was working during the day, doing stand up every night, and I was doing like 4 or 5 shows a night at one point. I was hosting mics. I was doing shows. I got a manager. I got an agent. Started doing the road, doing clubs and colleges, getting past. And then I'd got a TV show for a minute there, and then pandemic. But like I kind of worked my way up in that time, in tandem with like cartooning was growing, comedy was growing. if I split, splitting my attention, if I just did one of the things, I probably would have been much bigger at both, but I really wanted to do both. So I kind of went at a slower, smaller increment on both, which was fine by me. I'd never had any like grand designs on being rich and famous and crazy, like getting a late night, like a sitcom or a late night spot. I didn't really have those aspirations. I just wanted to do it. Yeah, that was kind of, I just wanted to keep learning and doing and doing and doing without like an end goal in mind.
When you came here, did you already, you talked about the risk of coming here. Did you know you had paid work waiting for you at that time?
Well, I had the comic strip, and that was my bread and butter. And that was my bread and butter for 16 years. That paid the rent and allowed me to kind of, I still had to supplement with other work, with other commission work, but it allowed me the kind of baseline income such that I could explore and, pay my way for a while. Until the Australian dollar tanked. And then the exchange rate wasn't so great. I was still being paid in Australian dollars. I think, there was nothing waiting for me here. I didn't have any work lined up. I didn't really have any jobs or anything to come to. It was a big risk. I had some savings, not that much, but enough to kind of get me by for the first 3 months, 6 months. And yeah, the work was just, again, it was that mad scramble. That was the vibe. It was just hustle. It was just like find work, find opportunities, meet people, put yourself out there. Just like build out a network, and I did. That's how I did it. Yeah, it was the income that I had was the comic strip until 2023 when Rupert Murdoch, the worst Australian ever to move to New York since me, he decided to kill the comic strip after 102 years. So, yeah. Then I was like, oh, crap. What am I going to do now? Yeah. So that was it. Yeah, it was the comic strip. Yeah.
How did you create opportunities for yourself here you alluded to needing to meet a lot of people, but what were the professional opportunities that you were eventually able to create in the U.S., and how did you go about doing that just strategically?
So I think the advice I got when I was in Melbourne it was like a musician. He was like, there's no better way it's twofold, like to do the work you want to be doing than to hang out around the people already doing it.
Great advice.
And, and also in doing so, you stand next to 1,000 other artists and go, well, what am I doing that everyone else is doing that I thought was unique that isn't? But then what's the thing I'm doing that I didn't realize only I'm doing that might actually be unique? And double down on that. Double down on the thing that you do that no one else is really doing. And so I did that. I was doing like live drawing at events, and I kind of leaned into that and joined a few agencies, like entertainment agencies, to do corporate gigs and parties. And I would take anything. I would take like bar mitzvahs and birthday parties and weddings and anything, conferences. And I would do live drawing at those, and that network of those clients, I would then parlay into, like, I'd get their emails, and I would then say, hey, if you ever have anyone in the team who's like retiring or being promoted or moving on or whatever, or has a birthday, I can do like a commissioned caricature of them. I could do a drawing of them, like a color, picture of them as a gift, for their retirement. And so then that built out that, and then there's a kind of it's like fractals in a way, because a lot of those people would leave those companies, and that would be a foot in the door at a new company where they'd be like, hey, we used you when I worked back at, BBDO, and now we got this. And so other cartoonists would also, when they got too busy, and this is like a key thing, again, the advice of like hang out around the people already doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to become friends with them, they'll A, teach you a whole bunch of skills that you didn't have, and B, they'll probably refer you for work if they like what you do. And so they would get too busy sometimes and go, give me a call and go, hey, do you have bandwidth to do this job? I don't have time to do it. And you end up getting more work from your fellow artists than any manager or agent or advertising or anything, social media. And to that end, I think for a while there, I sustained a lot of my my work by just either being referred by other artists or building up my own network of people I'd already worked from. And they go, all right, I want to try and get repeat business on those. And then there was this sort of exponential increase on those and that client base. That did change. Both in the pandemic when there was a contraction, and then also with AI, a lot of the clients, like advertising agencies and commissioned art, and design agencies, they decided to just use like Midjourney and then lay off entire art departments that I used to work with, and just use AI. And so I had to like figure out how to pivot, and I went to Substack in 2020, and that's my main gig now. Doing that. Yeah, that's my network now.
Tell me about that move. How did you know it was time to do that, and how has that been a positive and or a negative for you?
Well, when the comic strip was just unceremoniously dumped by Murdoch, it did make big news in Australia. It was like a big deal for them because they were like, what the hell is like killing peanuts? Like, what are you doing? This is insane. And they were going to do like an animated series like Bluey. And unfortunately, I wasn't going to be part of that. They wanted to go with it was the production company wanted to use their own people. And so I was like, well, I'm out in the cold. I don't know what to do. And around that same time, Substack had kind of become this, no one quite knew what it was yet. I don't think it even quite knew what it was yet. But it was like if WordPress and MailChimp and Patreon had a baby, weird threesome. But like, with just like, they mushed together and, kind of did all the work of like trying to find people, your people, and get money and like publish stuff that looks decent. And I think it was just out of like, I don't know what else to do. And I already had a weekly mailing list for comedy. Like I used to this is so dumb, but I guess it's part of the hustle. Yeah. If I did well at a show, like a club, I'd stand at the front door after the show with these little QR codes on a business card, and they'd be like, "Oh my god!" I was like, "Yeah, great set." I'd be like, "Thanks so much. Hey, sign up to my mailing list." And this is like I was on MailChimp. This is like in 2015 through 20. I just built this mailing list on MailChimp by handing out cards with a QR code on it for people to sign up. Yeah. And I would send out every week. I would send out where I was going to be performing that week, and people would show up. And then the bookers were like, "Oh, this guy seems to bring people in," so they booked me again, and that was kind of an interesting, very mercenary way of like getting more gigs and then getting passed at clubs and getting a manager, because I was like, I built this mailing list of people who opted in to hear from me, and then I never really did anything with it apart from that. And then when Substack came along, they were like, you can do so much more stuff. You can write about your process, your cartooning. You can publish cartoons. You can write about the stories of what your life living as a comedian and a cartoonist in New York City. You can, do video. I do video now, like live videos with other artists and comedians. And it just kind of, as it grew, I grew with it. It started... not in a toxic feature creep way. It just kind of started growing in its like capacity to do things. So it had like a recommendation engine. Then it built on like video and audio, like podcasting. And then it built on like the notes feed, which is kind of like Twitter in 2010 before it got shit. It feels like a very... it's the right tool for the right time, because instead of trying, like social media, just trying to reach as many people as possible, you're trying to find just the very specific sliver of people that are just wanting to hear from you. Yeah. So you're not trying to please the world. You're just trying to find your people, and then they recommend you to their friends who are similar, and you just find your people. And I've been trying to figure out who said this, but it's the perfect analogies. Instead of like trying to just keep trying to build a giant following on Instagram or something, or TikTok or whatever, and just please the world, you feed only those who show up for dinner. Just play to the people who subscribe to you. They're here. Just play to them. Don't play to the people who aren't in the room. Just feed them. They're here to eat. And so I do. And so it went from like 2,000 people to like 5 to 10 to now it's like 20,000 people. And it's growing. And I have paid subscribers now, which is great. And then I also sell my book through the Substack every week. Like that's a great vehicle to sell other stuff like commissions and books. And so that's like my main vehicle now, which I'm like knocking on wood because I'm like waiting for the in-shitification cycle to hit, just for it to turn into whatever the next Twitter or TikTok or whatever. But unlike the other models, like they all have ads. That's their model, is advertising. Whereas this is subscriptions, so they don't need ads. They could, like Netflix added ads, and they have subscriptions, but they're still in the phase where they're like, no, we're just going to keep we make money if you make money. So, the more subscribers I get, paid subscribers, they get a cut. They get like 10%. Then, they're like, great, keep growing. We'll help you grow because we make more money if you grow. And that's been interesting because that's forced me to have a deadline again, because I always lived under a deadline with the comic strip. And with the New Yorker, like every Tuesday, I'd pitch 10 cartoons to the New Yorker every week. I always had a deadline. And it kind of forces me to like think about like, what do I want to say in my voice instead of like working for a client or like a brief and like having to be a chameleon, like whatever they want, I'll just do that. I will say the thing I want to say in my own voice and draw in my own style. And that's been like the last couple of years at least has been like really exponentially just like really taking off, which I'm very lucky it has, because I don't know what else I'd be doing.
Wow.
I don't know what else I'd be doing if I didn't do that. Yeah.
Is that your primary output at this point and also your primary mode of income?
It is. Yeah, which is surprising. That's only recent that's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. It used to be the comic strip, and then that dried up, and then it was advertising illustration, that dried up, and then it was like caricatures and stuff, and that's kind of dried up as well. It's pretty sporadic. And the interesting thing is like you kind of justify spending more time on it because there are more and more people showing up to read it and respond to it. And just by virtue of building that list, you also build a community, just even accidentally, like in the comment section. And, people find each other in the comments. They're all similar kinds of people, And so and then, if I have something to promote, if I'm doing a show or I got a book coming out, I plug it on the newsletter and they all buy it or come to the show. And it's like the inbox, like the email inbox is like the last, even though it's just buried in spam.
Yeah.
It's like the last intimate place we kind of have that we still check every day. Like DMs and social, it all just feels like you're renting space on someone else's property. Whereas like in a mailing list, you can take those emails wherever you want. You can, and Substack lets you like export the emails if you want to just take in a MailChimp or ConvertKit, whatever, you can take them anywhere you like, but you have those. They're your people.
Yeah.
You have them. And you can reach them. And it's like 40-something% open rate versus if you got 1 million followers on Instagram, you promote a book, you get like 0.1% of people liking it or seeing it in their feed. It's like, what? That's insane. That's a crazy thing to like tether yourself to, is like an algorithm that's trying to copy TikTok. So yeah, like I said, I'm really lucky. And I think it was timing as well. It took like 5 years to get it to here of like posting a few times a week. Yeah. And
it sounds like you can be more authentic on that platform as well. I'd be curious to know what generally you're producing on there. Is it, your artwork, videotaping, yourself drawing? What kind of stuff do you provide in terms of content on Substack?
So it used to be, initially it was like behind the scenes process of like tools and tips and drawing and like, the creative process. But then I started writing about like the things I was doing in New York City, just like the events I went to and the places I would go and the people I'd meet. And I realized like there's so many people subscribed who aren't in New York City and they just want to know what it's like to live in New York. And so I started writing about that. And I'm not a writer. I don't consider myself a writer at all. But it forced me to kind of have to try and get good at writing, because I'm like, I want to try and share these stories with people who don't get to live the life I live. I don't get to live the life they live. And then I read their stuff and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, the way they live their life. But yeah, I started doing that and that really picked up. People started to really share those and like comment and ask questions. And I always was very conscious of like audience capture, of like, don't just double down on the thing that keeps getting the most engagement. Yeah. I would do the opposite. I would be like, I'd notice a trend. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do that for a while. I'm going to do something else. You are more authentic. You are more honest. I'm very honest on there. And it's very autobiographical. It's very like first person. I always love the work of like Hunter S. Thompson and David Sedaris and like people who can like build in. They place themselves in a time and a place with people and make observations and pull out details that they want to share about a place or a thing. And yeah, it's more stuff like that now, which surprises me because, again, I never thought I would be a writer. I'd never write for a living. And I draw, because I can draw, I draw pictures to go along with stuff that I am writing about. And sometimes I can't quite articulate something, so I'll just draw it. Because I'm like, I'm not that good a writer that I can describe everything, but I can draw. So I'll just fill in the gaps with art. And so I do that. And then very, very recently, I started doing these live stream on Substack where I get like people that I've always admired. I just kind of threw out an invite and went, I would love to talk to this person, like Austin Kleon, and like Mason Curry and like Ann Telney, the Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist who I like, just like love her work. And I was like, what have I got to lose? And I asked them and they all said yes. And I'm doing these live hour-long shows with them on video, talking about their process, asking them all these questions I've always wanted to ask. I've read all their books, you know, and I just like, all of a sudden it built this whole extra layer onto what I was already doing. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was putting a face to a name. I never really put my face out there before. I had a logo. And then they're like, oh, this is the face of the guy who's writing the words. So all of a sudden there's a person. And so again, it becomes even more authentic because they're like, oh, this isn't a bot. He's not generating this artificially. He's just writing and here's the person and he's speaking and they get a sense of me and my voice and my persona and that's been really interesting. I didn't want to do video initially. Substack told me to do it. They said you should try it, and then I did it once and it took off. So I was like, fuck, all right, do it. Yeah, but I really enjoy it. I love talking to other people, like creative people who I'm like, again, it comes back to when I was in Perth. I just want to learn from people. I want to figure out like, how do you do the thing you do? What can I learn? Very selfishly, just like, I want to figure out how to reverse engineer the thing. I want to do the thing you do. How do you do it? And yeah, we just like, I talk shop. And then we flip the camera halfway through the show and I live draw as well. So like, in the chat, people request things to be drawn. Yeah. Usually on the topic we're talking about, and then I'll just like draw just to kind of mix it up a little bit. But yeah, that's new and that's been going well too. So I write, I draw, and I record video and live draw. And then that's free to tune into, like the live stream. But then the replay, if you missed it, is paywalled. So that's kind of the model for that. And it seems to be working so far. So yeah, it's again, it's new. I'm figuring it out as I go. I think they are too. I think Substack are as well.
Yeah. I will just say, as an American, you've mentioned both of them, but the New Yorker and Mad, to me, those are probably the most iconic venues for cartoonists that I, at least growing up, that I was familiar with. I would love to learn about how you got to work for, as I understand it, you've done work for both of those platforms. How did that come about, and what's the status of that now, given the AI reality? Yeah, no, it has changed. A lot of cartoonists, their Mount Everest is getting a cartoon in the New Yorker, right? Because it's so hard. There's people who submitted for 10, 20 years without a single bite and then finally get in. Like David Cypress, I think, was pitching for like 20 years. To me, Mad was a bigger get in my head because as a kid, I was saying that was my like comedic pedigree. That's how I learned so many comedic conventions and like jokes and Yiddish as well. I learned so much Yiddish from Mad, and just like the style, the variation in styles in Mad. There wasn't a house style. So every cartoonist looked different. Yeah. They had their own very definitive style. And they were excellent craftsmen. So I think getting into Mad was a bigger deal for me than getting into the New Yorker. That's not to say that it wasn't a big deal when I finally got into the New Yorker. I was pitching every week to Bob Mankoff when he was the cartoon editor for years.
And I think being in Australia, again, didn't help because they didn't really know anything about me. There's no face to a name. Then when I finally moved here in 2014, I used to go in person and I would pitch. And every Tuesday at 10 a.m., we'd go in, we'd pitch a batch, and it'd be no, have a good day. And finally, in 2017, after years of pitching, I finally got a yes from Bob. And then he resigned, retired, and they brought in a new cartoon editor, and I had to start again.
Wow.
So I had to pitch again every week. If you do 10, roughly a batch of 10 cartoons every week, you pitch it to the cartoon editor, you sit down. She was actually pretty good. She gave feedback back then. You know, she'd go, well, no, but here's why. Or this is a maybe, and I was selling pretty consistently there for a while. My friend Scott Dooley, who's a comic, and my writing partner, he's one of these great kind of Aussie, like he and I had the same references growing up, like Mad and The Simpsons and all that kind of stuff. So we had the same shorthand. So we started submitting together for a while there where we would pitch jokes that we would come up with together at the pub, and that turned into a podcast called Is There Something in This? And that was when we were really selling very consistently with the New Yorker. And then the pandemic hit and they stopped doing in-person meetings, so we didn't get the feedback anymore. That was a huge, huge loss because now you're just like shooting cartoons into the vacuum of space and hearing nothing back. Maybe getting an email at 5 o'clock on a Friday saying okay to like one of them, maybe. So the New Yorker getting in was a big rush and it was huge, and it was like a big personal like victory.
Yeah.
And then being able to bring a friend in and like enjoy the spoils together and the fails, you the ups and downs are it's fun when you get to share it, the success and the failures together with someone. And then Mad was not until 2018. They had been in New York for like 60-something years. They moved to LA because DC got bought by Warner, and they wanted them to move out west to their offices. So that's when I got in. And I'm friends with all the cartoonists there. It's so weird. The Usual Gang of Idiots are like friends of mine. It's insane to me that that's a thing. And I think the big reason, again, that I really got a foot in the door there was the National Cartoonist Society, making those friends that I made years ago, that family of like cartoonists that I got like advice from and got mentoring from. They were the ones who were kind of helping me get good enough to get into Mad and pitch to Mad, and then eventually just like the contacts, to get into Mad. And then I was working for Mad a lot, like 3 or 4 things a day at one point. It was crazy. I was churning out stuff for them at a rate I'd never worked before because they were doing online stuff as well as the print magazine. They were doing like topical gags of the day for their socials. They were doing stuff at their website. They were doing like animation stuff. It was like the amount of volume I was doing there was insane. And then, they decided to DC and Warner Entertainment and all their wisdom after their superhero movies kept bombing, kept tanking. They kind of were cutting costs and they fired a bunch of people and fired the editor. And so now it's like a skeleton crew at Mad, and they're kind of running repeats, So technically, it hasn't folded because folded. It folded the back. But no, because a lot of the cartoonists did die as well. But there's like, I think they're taking a new cover each issue and a new Spy versus Spy and a new Mad fold-in at the back, but everything else in between is pretty much all repeats now. So, I got in right... I'm Indiana Jones my way in right as the door was shutting, right as the thing came down. So I did get to work for Mad right before before it kind of stopped soliciting work from artists. Yeah. So that was like a big dream. And it's crazy that I got to do that. It's like, it would be like watching SNL your entire life and then getting to be part of the cast. Like that's how big it was for me. It's crazy. Yeah. That was my SNL.
If I heard your story correctly about the New Yorker, you pitched for 3 years.
4 actually.
10 proposals a week.
Yep. 10 cartoons
for
a week.
no money.
No money. It's all spec work. Yeah.
with the hope that one day you would be able to get one of those approved and begin a relationship with them.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing. When they buy it, there's no guarantee they'll run it. So they pay for it, and then you never get to know when it runs. You have to buy the magazine. They don't tell you, hey, we're going to run your cartoon this week. You find out when everyone else finds out that you're in the mag. So I had to get a subscription, like get it every week and go and open to the contents page and go contributors, go, oh my God, it was me this week. Yeah. And sometimes they hold your cartoon forever and never run it. They spike it, they keep it in a drawer, which is tough because, as a comic, you're like, you want to be first to market with a joke in case someone else makes it. And when you do sell a joke to them, you're like, oh, great. Now this is going to be like this will be published and I'll be the one who made this joke. But sometimes what happens is you sell a joke to them and then they don't run it for ages. And then like several other people will post it on like Instagram or Twitter or Threads or something. You're like, oh shit, I sold that joke like 2 years ago to the New Yorker. They haven't run it yet. And then they publish it and you look like you're copying them. You're like, no, I did it first. They just didn't run it. So that's like a hazard of doing that, of like selling a magazine cartoon to the New Yorker is like, you hope they run it in a nice time frame from when you sell it. But you have no idea how long it'll take for them to print the actual joke. So yeah, but it's an interesting magazine. It's one of the last ones in the world that accepts gag cartoons. And yeah, I was pitching for years before they said yes. Again, they're kind of hazing you in a way.
Yeah.
They're like, they want to check that you're not a hobbyist, that you're not just doing this as a side hustle, that this isn't just some like, ooh, I want to call myself a New Yorker cartoonist by getting one in and then forevermore saying I got one in. It's like, no, you got to keep doing it. Like it's a job and you get paid, yes, it's spec work, but if you're consistent and you develop a voice and a style that eventually, similar to Mad Magazine, breeds this magazine full of like very different styles and voices and tones and comedic sensibilities, then yeah, you can do it regularly. But again, they want you to commit. They don't want you to just like, when I feel like it. It's like, no, you got to do it every week. Yeah, you got to stick to it. Yeah, it's tough though. There's 16 spots in the magazine each week. They buy 8 cartoons now. They used to buy 16. They buy 8 now because they run stuff they've already bought in the other 8 spots. And there are 2,000 submissions every week. Yeah, 2,000. And they're buying 8. Yeah, so it's pretty competitive.
I'd love to talk about the economics of this. So it's obviously zero for a long time.
For a long time, yeah.
Then they buy it. And then if they publish it, you get how does that work? What's I don't know how much detail you want to share, but I'd love to get just a rough framework for what this looks like.
So you get a lump sum payment on the cartoon itself. What they're paying for, and they don't even call them cartoons in the contract. They call them idea pictures, which is kind of weird. That's what and they don't even call them cartoons in the magazine. They call them drawings. They just always have since 1925, and they are in their 100th year now, and looking back over the way the economics of it in the past, you could make a really decent living selling magazine cartoons. You could sell to the New Yorker regularly and make a decent income and have a second house in Connecticut. You would get royalties on resales. People would see a cartoon and want to buy a print of it. And then there's one cartoon by a guy called Sam Gross. It's a tape dispenser, kind of looks like in the shape of a snail. And there's 2 snails off to the side, and one of them saying, "I don't care if she's a tape dispenser. I love her." And it's it's a funny little cartoon, but like so many people bought it. And the other one of his was this frog wheeling his way out of a French restaurant kitchen without any legs, with a woman eating, frog's legs at a table. And it's such a funny, dark little cartoon, but it got so many people buying prints of it that he bought a house with the royalties on that cartoon. So the economics of it used to be such that you could make a ton of money. And if you didn't sell the New Yorker, the next down was like Playboy, then it was Saturday Evening Post, then it was Esquire, then it was like, there was this hierarchy of magazines. And now it's pretty much the New Yorker. I mean, that's about it. Maybe Airmail as well. They pay less.
So you get they buy it from you. Is it like a flat rate of $1,000, $5,000, and then what do the royalties look like?
So if you're a beginning cartoonist, if you're a first, it's like $700-ish
If they say yes,
if they say yes.
$700.
Yeah, for a finished cartoon, yeah. And then what they're buying is exclusive first pub rights. That's what it is. You can't sell that anywhere else until they run it. And for 90 days post-publication, they have exclusivity on it. So it can't appear anywhere else in the world for those first 90 days after it's run in the magazine. After that, 90 days has lapsed. You can sell it to whoever you want. You can resell the cartoon.
Because it's your property.
Yeah, I mean, you still own the copyright, but what you're selling is a license to them and first pub rights. So a large part of that money isn't just the the cartoon itself. It's the rights. There are resale rights, but then the royalties are so tiny these days. It's ridiculous. It's like pennies. You get like a check for like 25 cents. You're like, really? You cut a check for this? The paper is worth more. And if you do sell there, I think the big thing now is just like, it's more I think the prestige of saying like you're a New Yorker cartoonist. So then when you take that to another thing where you're at an event or you're doing a commission, all of a sudden it's not just some artist. It's like, oh, I'm getting a portrait done by a New Yorker cartoonist. So that's kind of the second order value of the thing, where they're not actually paying you, but you're kind of using under the imprimatur of, hey, I'm a New Yorker cartoonist. Some people get one in and then just say, I'm a New Yorker cartoonist, which is a bit, well, it's not untrue, but it's like, all right, just get a few more in first. Yeah, so it's like doing an open mic and it's like, I'm a comedian. It's like, yeah, you are, but just do a couple more. Yeah, so the economics aren't great for a cartoonist working as a magazine cartoonist. You can sell like one a week, and that's $2,800 a month. That's not nothing. That's rent for some people, and that's it's. But I don't know anyone who's selling one a week. Yeah. I don't know anyone who's selling one a week.
And that would be the bulk of the money. The royalties really aren't anything. No. They're nothing.
No. You can sell prints on your Etsy or your Squarespace shop or Shopify or whatever. But, or like, print on demand, or you can sell signed prints at like conventions, Comic-Con, stuff like that. But like, yeah, it's really, the economics of like the resale stuff is really not that great anymore. The Condé Nast store is kind of not very good for that stuff. It used to be great. Now it's just like, they just cost cutting and staff cutting, and it's not great for that. Like I said, the royalties on resale used to be like insane. You'd get a check every month or whatever, and it'd be like, whoa, I could move to France on this. It's insane. So now it's changed pretty dramatically. Yeah.
God, man.
Yeah, it's wild.
So is it fair to say that in your world, either people with your background and your skill set, your talents, have either adapted to the new reality, have found a new audience on a platform like Substack to survive as a creative, or they've moved into an entirely different career because they just can't support themselves financially?
It's literally one or the other of those two things. Yeah. It's everyone I talk to who's been in the industry forever, they either bail out and go, I can't do this anymore. There's nothing left for me. Or they go, crap, what's the next thing? I have to pivot. I have to be malleable. I have to, evolve, adapt. And I was talking to a cartoonist just yesterday about this, and she started as a scientist, like in pharmaceutical industry, and then she became a cartoonist, syndicated cartoonist. She's a comic strip with King Features, and that's a newspaper strip that's kind of still around. But she was saying that she approaches it like a scientist, in that you're kind of always trying to solve a problem and then like rigorously you're trying to adapt and figure things out and build in systems and assess things as they change, because the only constant really is change now. And yeah, if you adapt to whatever the new thing is, like whether that was Instagram, if you graduated and wanted to be a cartoonist or an illustrator, you had to get on Behance and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all these things to like get your work out there. Now it's like, build a mailing list, find your people, get on TikTok. I don't know. Like, I decided that personally Substack was a better return ROI, like on my time, because I was noticing it was the only thing that was exponentially increasing in like returns on every time I would invest time in it. Everything else I was doing was just kind of dwindling. Like I was like, social media just wasn't like, it was trying to, Instagram started to become TikTok. And so any static image of a cartoon just got suppressed in the feed. And a lot of cartoonists who are making their living, a pretty decent living too, as a webcomic cartoonist on Instagram, like XKCD and you know, these like Gemma Carell and Heart vs. Brain and like all these big webcomics on Instagram. They were making decent money. They were getting ad rev. They were getting, they were selling merch. They were selling prints. Now they're like, crap, the algorithm's just like shadow banned us because we're not, you know, like one bad hashtag and, you know, and like I said before, it's like renting property on someone else's, like renting space on someone else's property. That's not you don't own those followers. That's someone else's platform. You can't take them with you anywhere. You can't take your Instagram people to TikTok or Substack for that matter. You can try, you can plug your Substack on Instagram to bring them over, but it's going to be a small fraction of the people. So I think the people who are adapting are still in it because they kind of have to. And if they don't want to, they bail out and they do something else. They get a job, they get a salaried position as something else. I do know a lot of people who did that, and it's kind of sad because they're incredibly talented people. I know a guy who just went into insurance, and he was a cover artist for The Economist and and Mad Magazine. He was an amazing cartoonist, and he's like, "There's just nothing left." It's wild and so depressing, but he was just like, "I can't do it. I can't start again. I'm out." You know. It's a very sad email to get.
For sure.
Yeah. So and I think of it like there are comedians who, when I started doing stand-up, it was all about, you had a really good act, you were good at writing jokes, you could play different rooms, you could do clubs, you could do colleges, you could do the road, you could do, corporates, whatever. You built an act, right? And you didn't have to really promote so much. Like you did, kind of. You had to sell yourself to club bookers and audiences to a degree. You had to go on, radio and TV sometimes and promote that you were doing a weekend at Magoobies or something. But then TikTok and Instagram came along and people started posting crowd work clips. People started sharing their act online, and then they got like big followers from that. And then they would spend more time building out that audience than doing the work on stage. Some of them, not all of them. But the one that they were kind of adapting to the reality of like, well, this is what it is now. Like, people are finding us on social media, so we're going to do that. And I think of it the same way. Like, it's like, well, if the industry adapts because the audience is finding you on a different medium, if they're not reading you in print anymore because they're reading you on a newsletter on their email inbox, then all right, reformat, adapt to that. If that's the thing, then, and you still want to do this skill, employ these skills, you adapt to that, and then there'll inevitably be another thing. There'll be a next thing, whatever it is, and then we'll adapt to that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. I think across my whole career, the reason I'm still doing it now 21 years later is that every time there was a change, I was forced into a corner and I had to fight my way out. I had to figure out, oh shit, all right, what am I doing next? What am I pivoting? When the one thing dried up, all right, what's next? What am I jumping onto? So yeah, I think that's the one and only skill, the survival skill that sustains you, is just like the ability to not calcify, to just kind of be malleable, to have that, what do you call it? Plasticity, I guess, to just like adapt and learn and change and grow. It's tough. It's pretty tough, but we don't have a choice.
That's what survival's about.
That's what survival's about. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Last question I would love to ask you is about and I like to ask guests this, how you think about success. I mean, I think it's true. I find that story about your friend who was a illustrator for the cover of the Economist magazine going into insurance. I mean, how fucking depressing.
Oh, I was so sad.
Fucking terrible.
He's so talented.
When you think about success for yourself, and I guess this is mostly for the near-term future, like the next few years, what does that word mean to you? What does a career that's successful, even a life that's successful to you look like?
I think about it a lot because I think having that in mind is important. I never realized that was a thing that you ought to really actually spend some time thinking about because I was so busy just trying to make the next, thing and get to the next spot. But like in my head, the idea of success is being able to, this is my definition of it, is being able to do the work you want to do on your terms for the people that are going to enjoy it, such that you can make a good living. It doesn't have to be this stratospheric, rich and famous life, because I think there is no more monoculture. There's no ubiquity anymore. There's no big stars. Yeah, I think a model that I could compare it to would be like David Sedaris. He writes a book, then he goes on a book tour, he reads it, people come to a theater to watch him read his work, and they laugh, and he gets to edit it and tweak it and then go to a different city and do that. I like that idea of, even metaphorically, having people come to read my stuff. The people that really like it enjoy it and they get something out of it. Maybe it helps them in some way. Having that enough people, like the Kevin Kelly 1,000 True Fans kind of thing, where it's just enough people that you hit your enough. You find, so success is like hitting that enough, doing the thing that I want to be doing on my terms to the people that are going to enjoy it, to the degree that I can hit my enough, where I'm like not panicking about rent or any of that stuff. I'm just like comfortable and free to create, and to me that's as good as it gets. Like I know people who have these stratospheric goals of being rich and famous and all this stuff, and I'm just like, you're gonna get it, and then behind mountains and more mountains, you're gonna want the next thing. Is hedonic adaptation is this thing that just keeps going. So like if you have a thing in mind and you hit it and you're like, great, I'm here. This is it. This is great. And then you're happy that that's your enough. That's success to me. Like that's happiness. And that's what I'm kind of working towards now, is enjoying doing the thing, and for the people who want to see the thing I'm making. And that's it. I'm not trying to build some legacy after I'm dead. I'm not trying none of that shit. I don't care. I'm not going to be here to enjoy it. I just want to enjoy the thing I'm doing while I'm doing it now, and then have a good life. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's success to me. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. Thank you, bro. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this has been so good. It's been a pleasure. This is really fun. This is good. This is really nice. Thanks. Good questions too. Holy crap.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.